Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. We are delighted to have you here. Shira Lotzar hosting our event today and joined by Vern Schellinger, our fellow career coach and networking expert. And we are here to answer your questions. I know we have a new person here. Tabi, welcome to our group today. Our format is really simple. We are an open Q&A kind of a group. So if you have any job search question, you're welcome to share it with us, and myself and Vern will do our best to answer. And of course, if all of you have any responses, you're welcome to chime in as well. But as we get going, I actually got an advanced question. Okay, so somebody who used to be a regular on our program, he actually landed a job, and unfortunately, it's not going exactly as he had planned. And so his question is basically, how long should one wait before looking, when starting a new job, before looking for another job? Okay, from the perspective of an employer, the situation that he's in is a real cultural issue. He actually figured that out even before he got there, because there were Glassdoor reviews that were indicating this, and sure enough, it's unfortunately the way he had thought it would be. That said, this is a job that in a sector that he really, really wanted to get into. In fact, had been trying for a couple of years to get into the sector. It was a big career shift for him. So, he wanted to get in, and he's in. So I'm going to do my best to address this right now. Vern, please feel free to chime in. Vern used to be an HR executive, and, we both have our kind of HR hat, recruiter hat, on. So obviously there's a couple different sides to this. Optically, from a resume perspective, you want to stay in a job at least a year, all right, for it to look like you actually made a commitment. That's what employers are typically looking for. Obviously, longer than that is ideal. Do you have to know? Are there extenuating circumstances? Obviously, there are people who leave jobs much sooner than that too. I've absolutely seen it. I've recruited people, who've been in the job for 6 months. And of course, as a recruiter, I say, well, why have you been there such a short time? And they have to tell me why. So it's not that you can't, okay? It's not, there's no law, there's no rule around this. In an ideal world, you'd stay at least a year. Obviously, mental health is important too, right? You can't, you can stick it out as long as you can stick it out. And not to mention that, I know in this individual, took them so long, right, to actually get into this sector. I would just, because I know this person is going to be watching this video, right? So I'm just speaking to him right now, to say that, look, despite the culture situation, obviously you want to learn as much as you can while you're there. Contribute as much as you can while you're there. Your whole point with getting there was to make an impact in that particular sector. So if there is any way that you can swallow hard, pray, right, seek the peace of God while you're there and learn whatever you can learn, I would recommend trying to stick it out. I know that situations are situations. You can only do what you can do, but definitely see what you can do to, kind of extend your time there. So anyway, that would be my 2 cents. Vern, do you have anything else to share?
No, I would agree with everything Shira said. And much like a lot of other questions, sometimes in the job search, there is no right answer here. There is, and it becomes a very individual, personal situation. I mean, if it's absolutely, as Shira said, mental health, if you're going to work every day and you're and you're depressed, and then maybe you do have to just quit after a few weeks. But I also know the individual. I know how hard he tried to get into this sector. Yeah. And so my thinking, I'd say the same thing Shira said. Boy, if there's any way that you can stick it out, stick it out as long as you can. And the other part of that is not only getting into this sector, but again, hopefully being able to network and meet people in this sector, this area of the nonprofit associations. And the more people you meet and the more people you build relationships with, if you do have to leave 6 months or a year later, you've in effect started to build relationships that may help you get out of that situation, help you get out of that situation and find a job soon. Now, if you leave that job, maybe it'll still be another 6 months or a year before he finds another job. Who knows? Nobody knows the answers to those questions. But by having relationships built, it will help. It should make that transition easier.
right? And my understanding from this individual is that the situation, I don't know if it's directly impacting him in his job, but it's absolutely impacting the culture. There's been turnover, and the leadership has been, anyway, it's a whole thing. So it doesn't sound like it's his job, but it's the culture, which is obviously impacting him just because he's part of the culture and part of the team. So that's not fun at all, because people are very disgruntled. So it sort of affects everybody. But that said, I would say to this person, to the extent that you can hunker down, again, learn what you can, contribute what you can, make an impact as you can, in your spot, right? Maybe even try to positively impact the culture the other way. Be a support to your colleagues, right? As they're going through this situation, be light, be salt, to the folks who are around you. This is not a happy situation, but you can make a positive influence, right? What do they say? Life is not what happens to us. It's our reaction or our response to it. So your response to what's going on could be, could be telling and helpful, to other people as you be that positive, positive light to the folks that are around you. So there is another way to look at this, right? To go for the positive, and see what you can do to be an encouragement, to others. Even though you can't change the leadership, you can kind of put your arms around your colleagues. Ty?
If I could chime in, I would ask the question myself: is this directly affecting my performance? So it doesn't go down the road and they say like, hey, this is not working out between us. You have a bad attitude or something. Is it directly affecting that they're going to say this is not working, and that puts you in jeopardy? And then they'll say, okay, see you later.
That's the other
what
side
I
of
would
it.
say, because I don't think while we look for a great culture, I don't think any culture is the perfect culture.
No.
There's going to be something probably bottom line is I always think there's not the perfect job, but we want to find the right fit.
It's true. People are, there's a quote that I pulled up for a presentation recently, and the quote it's from organizational psychologist Frederick Hertzberg's two-factor theories. He's a famous psychologist. The quote is, "What makes people happy at work is what they do, but what makes people unhappy is the situation in which they do it." Right? And that's oftentimes why I'm hearing anybody look for a job, whether they're coming to me as a recruiter or as a career coach, constantly, coworkers, leadership, toxicity, whatever, lack of agency in their work, all the million things. And so
the biggest one being your boss.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. People join companies and leave managers.
Yeah.
Which is very, very common. And so, again, to Ty's point, to the extent that, to this person that you can, again, do a great job so that, that you're not being impacted by the environment, so that your work isn't impacted. So how you're being perceived by the leadership isn't impacted. That's the other side of this. So lots and lots of reasons for you to be a force for good, be an encourager, keep your head up. How long you can stick around, that's up to you and the Lord. So, you got to make that decision, but definitely try to be an encourager. Lee?
I was going to ask, it doesn't sound like this person's part of leadership,
No.
lower tier. Then I would sort of go along with what you were saying, in that I think and I guess it also depends on what the cultural issue is, and I'm not asking that, but if it's something that's very blatant and it affects your, religion or your race or marital status or something like that, where there's a culture where you feel really out of place, then I think you have to extricate yourself from something like that.
It's not that. It's more that people are being, how do I put this? From what I can tell, there's just an email. The one person was summarily dismissed recently for something that apparently did not seem egregious to anybody else other than maybe leadership. And so it's the way that leadership is treating staff. It's more, I think it's more in that vein.
I would say, to mirror what you said, the longer you can stick it out there and be in the industry and meet people, you put your head down, contribute every single way that you can, meet every single person you can.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has had a situation where they've had a tough boss, and you have to figure out when it's the right time to leave. But The more time you can get under your belt doing your job in that particular field, it sounds like that they wanted to be in. That's a positive thing.
Right. And again, making an impact, because the reason why this person shifted into this sector is
Yeah.
specifically to me. I mean, this is a mission-driven sector.
Yeah.
And like this person, like for years has said, I want to support this sector. And they finally got the job. Right.
Yeah.
So think about, that's actually the other thing I was encouraging you to think about. Why did you get into the sector in the first place? Why did you accept this job in the first place?
Right.
To make an impact in the sector. Right. So keep that as your mission. Keep that as the lens. You didn't get in there because of the culture. You got in there because of mission.
Yeah.
So
You can adapt to culture.
you can adapt to culture. There's no perfect culture. And I know this is a little extreme culture, but still there ain't no such thing as a perfect place. So like have your blinders on, mission, 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 go make an impact, you know?
Yeah.
I would also say for this person to get involved in the industry groups, which they may already be, get involved as many as they can. Not that they're going to jump, but they may be some colleagues in some other organizations could help them. Not that he's going to spill the beans, but maybe just give some advice.
Could be.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing I would say, the library has so many resources on, how to deal with toxic work culture, how to deal with, I think, like she was saying, extreme, just different type of work cultures that's out there. You can glean a lot of information from the libraries, and they even have free career coaches through the library.
That's a great point, Sil. And even www. Right? Like just Google it. How to deal with a toxic workplace, how to deal with toxic bosses. There's lots of articles, so what Sil is suggesting, articles, YouTube videos, there's a lot of different resources to help handle, because of course you're not the only one dealing with this, right? Lots of people go through this. How to manage up, and even how to be a good coworker, right? And to be that encourager to help improve the culture to whatever extent you can. So there you go. There's our collective 2 cents for you. All right. So who has another question about the job search?
I'm unmuted, right? Yep. So my question was, do you know any good websites to look up, like volunteer opportunities? Opportunities, like potentially, like to maybe gain some experience.
So I'd ask you a more specific question. What kind of experience are you looking to glean?
Working with people, like maybe like hotlines or things like that.
Is there a specific mission that you're interested in?
Well, I was considering potentially at some point getting into coaching space.
Okay. Is there a specific kind of demographic you want to coach?
Well, I was considering potentially wanting to coach like people who might be stuck in like knowing what they want to do in terms of a career, or I come from a piano teaching background, so the thought of like incorporating some mindset in there as well, in terms of like helping like pianists like overcome like stage fright, or people who might be afraid of like interviews, like job interviews.
Okay, so now we're getting more specific. I'm really glad you shared that, right? Because that's a pretty targeted kind of a thing. What I would do is the place that I know of right off the top of my head would be to approach the National Association of the National Association of Music Educators. It's actually called NAFME, NAF. The F stands for, or I guess it stands for National Association for Music Educators. They happen to be a national association here in the DC area, but that's irrelevant. It's a membership organization. I don't know whether pianists have their own association. Maybe you would, but but the music educators have that association. And with all associations, right, there's always volunteer opportunities. And so you can join that, connect around and see if maybe there is either what's called a SIG, a special interest group for piano teachers, right? There very well may be. If there is, I'd hook yourself into that group and
Okay.
see if you can volunteer and say, hey, I'd love to provide some career coaching to that group. And I'll tell you something, plenty of associations have professional societies, okay, which is what NAFME is, have career-oriented programs for their members. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, there's an association whose members are attorneys. And I happen to know the human resources person of that national organization. So she brought me in one time and said, hey, we've got a national conference coming up. Can you spend a day if people sign up, attorneys, right, who want some free career advice? Sure. So I showed up, and for 10 hours or 8 hours, whatever, I was like, boom, 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 boom. And I just sat there and I did some coaching for them, right? So that's just an example of how a professional society can help. So it might be that NAFME has that kind of program. And if they don't, you could suggest it and say, hey, I want to raise my hand and offer some free coaching. Who would say no?
I found through a Google search some hotline websites, which is I guess more pertaining to more like crisis management, like if someone needs someone to talk to.
I would do that if you really want to do sort of a community service just to help people in general. And that's lovely.
Okay.
Please feel free to do that. If you're doing it because you really want to start a business in career coaching for piano teachers, I'd go after the piano teachers. You could do both. My goodness, you could do hotlines. That would be what a wonderful thing to do a crisis hotline for people. Feel free. But that's a specific kind of a need when people are in crisis, right? Emotionally. Feel free to do that. And I recommend that you look at developing your skill set with people who you actually want to help professionally. So maybe one is just a labor of love and just a volunteer community service. And then the other could be more of your professional leaning. Vern, did you have any suggestions?
The only other suggestion I would have is you've asked this question to Shira in the group and you're getting some feedback. Make sure you ask this question to everyone in your network, everyone who family, friends, people you work with, people that you have a pretty good relationship, and say, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, and ask them for suggestions. Now, some of them may say, geez, I don't know anything about that, and they won't be helpful at all. But all it takes is one person who says, I can connect you directly to this, and this is exactly what you're looking for, and you struck gold.
Yeah, also reach out to other piano teachers that you know. Maybe they're involved in a group.
Yeah. I did consider doing getting into HR space for a little bit, because most of the coaches that I've talked to have some experience in the HR space before they did.
You don't necessarily need that. That's a whole other profession. Vern and I know that world well. That's a whole career field that is way beyond coaching. And Kimberly's in that too. She's a trainer. It's a lot more than coaching. It's benefits and compensation and recruiting and all these other things. So you'd have to be pretty committed to get into that field. I'm not quite sure we advise you to go down that path. You don't need to be.
Okay.
Yeah. Because look, you have lived experience as a piano teacher. You understand the profession. You understand what it's like. You would be probably providing some advice that's very real and grounded, way beyond what an HR person could do. I think you'd be able to partner with them maybe even more practically than anyone else could.
Okay.
Yeah. Kimberly?
Tabby, if you are interested in, I don't know anything about the piano part of it. I wish I could help you with that. But as far as volunteering in other areas, it may not necessarily be crisis hotline, but I have contacts at the Red Cross. The Red Cross has all kinds of needs as far as volunteering. So I'll be happy to share contacts at the Red Cross. One is local. One of the ladies is local. The other one, she's she's a national director She's based in Dallas, but she's a national director. So,
Mhm.
and they have a lot of different opportunities. You'd really be surprised. You know, a lot of times I think people think Red Cross, they just think what they see on TV, like the emergencies where people are out there if there's a fire or a natural disaster, but they have a lot of other opportunities. So I'm more than happy to share that with you. I'll reach out to you via LinkedIn and give you
Okay,
that
sure,
info.
sure.
Okay. Other questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you to Shira and Vern for doing this every week, and the other experts that have come on. It's been really helpful and helpful to my job search. I'm very grateful for all of you, and also the people that come on and add comments. Thank you.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Welcome, Ty.
So I have a question. I'm in a situation right now where I got offered a contract job back in December and they keep waylaying the date. I'm supposed to be starting on the 7th, but I still don't have a contract. It's not a job that I haven't done before, but what if I don't have a contract on the date I'm supposed to start? I mean, should I go in and have them give me a contract? Or I'm really funny about this. I figure if I don't have a contract, I'm not going, but you know.
Well, when you say a contract, what are you, tell me exactly what you're looking for, because for example, in a tradition, I know that this is not a full-time job, right? Or is it? It's not, right? It's just sort. Well, anyway, in a full-time position, you know, most employers give offer letters, but even an offer letter is not a contract per se. It's a sort of a written agreement. But there are plenty of people who don't even get offer letters. So it's not, if they offered you and you accepted, that's it. Like you're in. Anything else?
Usually the letter has the rate of pay and the expectations, and it's basically like a contract. And I've had one from them before, but I can't seem to get it out of them this time.
Yeah, I would assume all systems are go, and it could just be, you know, a paperwork issue. I don't know, who knows? Maybe the person that was supposed to do it left their job. I mean, maybe just got lost in the shuffle. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for this. So I wouldn't assume that you're not starting. If you don't have, keep asking, obviously, before the 7th. But if the 7th comes, just show up and say, hey, you know, I'd love to walk into HR, you know, and just say, hey, I really would love to get this on paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Assume you're a go unless you hear otherwise.
So maybe I follow up with that. Are there resources to look at for contracts for executive leadership positions? I've got some colleagues who have them, and I'll be reviewing theirs, but I was just wondering if you knew of any.
Contracts as in employment contract of traditional full-time?
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, employment attorneys are the best for that. I mean, look, I have some, Vern might even have some from his old days, from just people I've placed, you know, but obviously I'd have to redact it, you know, to share.
Right.
But, you know, in terms of resources online, I mean, obviously you could Google it, right? But really employment attorneys are the ones who have their, you know, have their hands on that kind of stuff. Now, ASAE may also, I have a feeling they do actually, they might. So I would look up, you know, I forget what they call it. It was the models and templates section, I think, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Kimberly, do you have a question?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Not so much a question, but kind of just some encouragement. And we've talked about this before, my challenge with patience sometimes. You know, be patient in your search, because I'm actually in the interview process with a company that I applied for a position in December. So there's just a lot going on, and to the point you just made, Shira, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Always.
You know, and, you know, having been in the HR, under the HR umbrella for a number of years, I have lots of friends who are recruiters. They're going crazy right now. It's just a lot going on.
That's right.
So if you applied for something, you haven't heard anything, don't, throw in the towel like, okay, I just wasn't a good choice or whatever. I have had 2 positions that I applied for in December. One of them, I'm in the final round of interviews on Monday, and I have to do a presentation as well. I'm more concerned about the presentation. Don't ask me why. I've been training for over 20 years. That should come secondhand. And then I got a call yesterday for another company. I applied for a position with them in December.
Yeah.
And so you just
it takes time. Look, I want you guys to walk a mile in the recruiter's shoes for a second. Okay. I want to give you a little bit of a taste of what it's like for them. And I'm talking specifically about corporate recruiters, those who are full-time employees of a company, which means that the company's large enough and there are enough open positions for them to have an exclusive job. I want you to imagine that you have 10, 20, 30 open jobs on your desk. You're the recruiter, okay? You've got hiring managers breathing down your neck. Where are my candidates? Where are my candidates? You've got either candidates pouring in or the opposite. You can't find anybody for this unicorn position. You've got to keep track of every single person, the stage of the process that they're in, the scheduling with all the hiring managers and putting everything together. You've got to be organized. You've got to have systems in place. You've got to be able to manage your time all in the course of an 8-hour, 9-hour day. Okay. This is intense. I am a recruiter myself. I'm a third party, right? So I don't have 30. I couldn't handle 30 open recs. That would be ridiculous for me. The 1, the 2, the 3, whatever I have going on at the moment, just for me alone. Okay. Got my little spreadsheet, got the names of the people. I try to be organized, but I'm just talking about one and it's enough for me to deal with that, let alone if you're working in a corporate environment and all the paperwork you've got to go through, the database systems and the processes. Vern, you could probably speak to this a lot better than I can. It is nerve-wracking, and you've got to be a ridiculously organized person, and then things change. Hiring managers stall, they change their mind, they go on vacation. They don't get back to the recruiter when the recruiter's like, hey, I need feedback on this person, blah, blah, blah. What's going on? What's going on? The hiring managers got their own stuff that they're going through, and recruiting's the last thing on their mind. I mean, it's complicated, and you're the one person in the midst of all of this chaos, and you're like tapping your fingers on the table, and you're just one of 100 people that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so there's a reason why they don't get back to you as quickly as you'd like. And it's a really I could not do it. I could not be, unless God said, you have to, maybe he knows, but I don't think I could handle it. Really. I just don't think it's a very, very chaotic kind of a thing. So Vern, do you want to talk about this at all?
Yeah. In every role that I've had, just about in my entire career, I had either full HR responsibilities or partial HR responsibilities. And sometimes, I did, it was direct recruiting. I was the one responsible, but often I had people reporting to me. But even so, so for instance, in higher level positions, when I was, helping hiring managers figure out, who to hire and so forth and so on, as Shira said, sometimes I'd go through a stack of, 50 resumes, pick out the 10 that I thought were great, get them to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager's telling me, I need this position tomorrow. I need it quick. And I give them 10 resumes. And I said, tell me which 3 or 4 you want to interview.
Crickets.
I'd wait a week. Hey, where are your resumes? I'd wait 2 weeks. And of course, you as the candidates, if you were one of those resumes, you're sitting out there going, what's going on? And so the hiring, as Shira said, the hiring manager stalls, they get busy, they have other crises, they don't get back to you. And so that's just one example of the many that Shira gave. That's just a reality on the inside of any organization.
That's right. It's, a small organization that is doing a very limited search might be able to get back to you on the quicker side. Yeah. The larger the organization, the more complex it is, the more variables they're dealing with, the more it's like, how do they get, it's like, think about a large company, a vendor, a bank, okay, that all of us, I presume, bank, right? Okay, so banks are sizable. Some of us go to really, really small banks, local community banks, and some go to the Citibank, right? Or Bank of America. The Citibanks and Banks of America, when you call them, what do you get? You get a call center. Why? Because they have thousands and thousands and thousands of clients like yourself. They have to organize themselves. It's the same thing when you're dealing with an employer. when they're really, really big, they're dealing with hundreds, thousands, just so many people. They've got to have an organized system. And the fact is that these poor recruiters, they're not a call center, right? They can't, that's not what they do. They're juggling all of these different pieces. And for them to get back to you in a timely way is really, really, really challenging, unless they have all kinds of admin people and, you know, they've got it all systematized, but generally they don't. It's that one recruiter or even several recruiters, but the load that they're juggling is really, really, really intense. Small organizations, sure, there might be a little bit more responsiveness. Working with a boutique, you know, if there was a boutique recruiter like myself involved, sure, it may be more responsive. In fact, I have a lot of candidates who are shocked. They're like, oh gosh, thank you, Shira, for responding to me so quickly. Well, I can. I have the time, I can make the time to do that because I don't have the volume that a corporate recruiter would, let alone an HR person. That's the other thing. If you are a mid-sized organization, even a small organization, they're not going to have a corporate recruiter. They're going to have an HR generalist, someone who's dealing with every aspect of HR, one of which is recruiting. So they're dealing with employer relations and benefits and compensation. Oh, and by the way, they have to recruit. And by the way, most HR people don't like to recruit. And it's sort of last thing on their list, right? And they don't even have a system for it. They do a one-off search, right? Once in a while. So they don't have it routinized. So anyway, there's so many different variables. I always say on these calls, pack your patience. Pack your patience when you're in the job search. You don't know what's going on the other side. Too many variables than you can count, but it's never over tilts over. It's one egg in your basket. If you've applied, keep it out there, back of your brain. If they call you, great. If they don't worry about it. Move on to something else. No matter what stage you are in the process, you can touch base. You can let people know you're still there once in a while. But at the end of the day, when they're ready, they will come find you. Yeah. And by the way, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna make one more comment. We haven't talked about this in a while, but I do want to make mention. Besides the whole idea of them getting back to you in a timely way, just to even get noticed, right? There are two primary things that you've got to do. Number one, if you are applying to a job, excuse me, through a job board, meaning there is an actual position description, make absolute sure you customize your resume for every single job. Can I just let that hang in the air? Customize your resume. Never, ever, 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 ever send a generic resume in. Never, never. Ain't no such thing anymore. Employers are looking for it. That you can, the only way you can stand out is if you let them know in no uncertain terms that the keywords they've got on that position description are keywords that they're going to find on your resume so that they can make the match. Otherwise, you're asking them to be a mind reader and they can't. You're asking them to dig into your resume to figure out, does he have the skill? Does she have that skill? They can't do it. Your keywords have got to be bolded. I usually recommend to bold them next to the accomplishment. I'll just go ahead and pull this up really, really fast. I haven't done this in a while, but I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you a sample resume of what I do. Some of you know I'm a resume writer, and I also write LinkedIn profiles. Anyway, I'm going to show you a section from a classic resume that I do. And you'll see that you have an accomplishment story here, but then you also have a label, okay? What I call a competency label. And that helps the employer to go quick down the page, right? So that they can actually see. Now, you customize these things. This is a master resume, but if there was a specific position, they needed to see a certain skill, relabel that bullet with the skill that they're looking for. Okay, so make it really, really easy on the eye. And by the way, Lee, since you're on this call and you are an association executive, I'm going to go to the top of this page in a second. This is something that I do specifically for association execs. I don't do this for normal people, but I have a specific kind of text box here. Regular people, I don't do this, but association execs I do, because your skill sets are so diverse. It's nice to have them in sort of a labeled kind of a way, right? Most people, I just do just a traditional like 2-line text box, but for folks like you may want to borrow something like this for yourself.
I have something like that in mind.
Okay, sure. So anyway, customization. And the second thing, of course, is to get noticed is have an internal champion. Always and always important. The internal champion is somebody who works in the organization, who can flag your resume in front of the hiring manager, in front of the HR person. If you just apply and just assume that someone's going to see you, 9 times out of 10, they won't. For whatever reason, the algorithm in their applicant tracking system doesn't pick up your resume, whatever, you just get lost in the shuffle. But when you have somebody who can recommend you in, always the best thing. And one of the best ways to do that is through LinkedIn. In the upper left-hand corner of LinkedIn, there's a search bar. Pop in the name of the organization, hit enter, click on the number of employees. It'll pull up the people who work there who are in LinkedIn. And then see if you can find the name of the hiring manager. If that person is second level to you, you'll have a first level mutual contact. Reach out to that person to say, hey, would you pass? I've recently applied for XYZ, position. Susie, would you mind sending my resume and application and cover letter to John Smith, the hiring manager, for extra consideration? Getting that extra consideration is absolutely huge. So
here's a true story that happened in the last 48 hours. My nephew's wife got in touch with me and said, I'm looking for a new job. Would you look at my resume? I looked at her resume, and she told me about Mellon Bank and how she was trying to, get a job there. And she had a good friend who worked there, and her good friend was trying to help her, get in there. And her good friend just got promoted to hiring to a management position. So her good friend said, send me your resume. I have more influence now.
Exactly
I can actually make the decision. So talk about having an internal champion. You couldn't find one much better than that.
That's right.
So.
All right, Tabby, I think you had a question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to offer a little bit of encouragement for people that were in the HR space. In regards to recruiting, I used to, from an outsider's perspective, not quite understand why the interview process was so short in terms of maybe 5 to 10 minutes, but I understand from the recruiter's perspective why now, because they have all these candidates to go through. So I have a new respect for the recruiters. So
yeah, it's a busy job. All right, other questions? Yeah, Kimberly.
I feel like I'm full of comments this morning. So as far as interviewing, and Tabby, you just reminded me of it when you made the comment about interviewing. I had one of the more interesting interviews it was one day this past week. It's been a busy week. It's really important to practice your interviews. I had an interview where the hiring manager talked more than I did. So I had to, because typically it should be 70% of the time the candidate is talking, and 30% or even more, flipped a little bit more, that the hiring manager is talking. So if you have one of those situations, be sure to insert your star stories. I literally a couple times had to just jump in and insert a star story and say, oh yeah, by the way, here's a situation where. So the more you practice interviewing, it is so helpful, because if I hadn't been practicing, I may not have known to do that. So
that's a great tip,
just to let you know.
That's a great tip. For those of you who don't know, what Kimberly is referring to as STAR story, situation, task, action, results. Some people call it SAR, situation, action, result. There's different, it's all the same stuff. It's a story. And so practicing your STAR stories in advance will give you the opportunity to insert them, like Kimberly said, if you need to. Remember that not every interviewer is experienced in interviewing. In fact, most aren't. Even recruiters, right? We wing it, right? People don't get trained in how to recruit. You kind of have to learn on the job. So oftentimes an inexperienced recruiter will do more of the talking because they just don't know what to ask. So your ability to kind of interject and say, oh, like listen for the pregnant pause. And when they've said something that's relevant to your background, oh, Mr. Employer, I'm so glad you said that. Actually, I have experience. And they're like, great, thanks. You're making their job easier because they don't necessarily know, what to ask you. Lee? Oh, sorry. Laverne?
I was going to say, I think I shared this story with the group a while back, but one of the last interviews I had was with the chief financial officer of the organization. And the first 10 minutes of the interview, he was bemoaning the fact that the person, the senior VP of HR, who had just announced his retirement, was just worshiped by everybody in the company. And he felt this tremendous pressure. How am I going to possibly find somebody as good as Howard? And I'm listening to this and I'm going, what's that got to do with me as a candidate? So the other thing you can do if the interview is talking too much is try to insert a question. So I said to the CFO, I said, so what was it about Howard that made him so, loved by everybody in the organization? Specifically, what was his behaviors? What did he do? What did he accomplish? So once he started to tell me those things, then I could relate my source story about how I had those skills. So I basically, I felt that interview, I had to orchestrate how the interview went in order for to even get my point across. And so this is the CFO of the organization, and to Shira's point, whether it's a junior recruiter or somebody in the senior level, you just never, in fact, one of the things when I'm coaching people, I'm saying, okay, you're ready for the interview. One of the things, expect the unexpected. You just never know what the situation is exactly. You've got an idea of what's going to happen, but every organization and every interviewer is just a little bit different.
That's right. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Vern.
What was it that made him so loved? I'm interested to know.
Well, a lot of it was again interpersonal. He had great interpersonal relation skills. He bent over backwards to help people. He created some innovative programs in HR. He had just recently created this leadership program that everybody was raving about, which was which is all good stuff. He was well liked. Now, one of the things about this particular organization was that everybody was there for 25 years. So as I joined the organization, I realized that, there's things in this organization that they're not aware of, that, we're the 21st century. And so a lot of what I did was bring about change that was positive change, but the organization simply, like I said, they just didn't, they were very conservative and very, it was a great organization. And I had a great, 5 years when I worked for them, but it was about bringing about change. And even the recruiter who was an outside recruiter, much like Shira, said to me, Vern, she said, it's a really conservative organization. And she said, I wanted to make you aware of that as you go into this. So Howard did a great job for the time that he was there. I think I did a pretty darn good job for the time that I was there, but it was different. It was change. It was even the leadership program that Howard had created with the internal group. There were a lot of things in there that really, they thought it was great, but it really wasn't. One example, their leadership program had like 40 different competencies that they wanted people to learn. 40 competencies in the leadership program is way too many. So.
Wow. Thanks for all that, Vern.
Yeah.
So grateful.
Yeah.
Lee?
And
Okay.
well, I guess I would add for any job seeker, that's part of your mindset as you go into a job. Who was there? What was success like? What did they do? And then, what are they expecting you to do? And how, and where can you take it? Where can you improve it? Where, you might get even, again, in an interview, possibly make suggestions. And now here's something I'm thinking about. Do you think this would work in this organization?
Oh, anytime you can proffer suggestions, what I call humbly confident suggestions,
Yeah.
right? Where you're saying, you're framing it like, would you consider, how would this work? Might this be possible? Have you ever tried? Question mark, question mark, question mark. But you're proffering an idea in the midst of it that shows that you're thinking, your dot connector, but you're not being presumptuous.
Yeah, the phrase that I often use when I was interviewing for something like that is, I don't understand the whole context. I don't have all the information, but based on what I know, here's what I think would work.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah, and then proffer back to them.
Yeah.
Lee?
I would add to that. I have a question afterwards, but interviews are a transaction, just like pretty much everything else in life. And, from a salesy perspective, if you are having an interview with, hiring manager, and you find something that you really gee and haw and you really connect on, and they talk a lot, they immediately start to infer that you are a like-minded individual, and there's a shared love of something, and that psychologically raises you in their mind because, we went to the same school, or we're in the same sorority, or we both worked, in the trenches at this other company. And that has always sort of served me well. If I, in my questions, can find some sort of connectivity between us, then that raises me up above the other candidates because we have a shared experience. So you can't always find that, and you don't always have the time to do it. But when you do find that sort of connection of star crossing, it's a very valuable thing to take advantage of. And again, from a sales perspective, the more the person you're trying to create a connection with talks about themselves, the more they like you, because we tend to talk about ourselves a whole lot. And if someone's willing to listen to us talk about ourselves, we're noticing that. So I just, from a different sort of hat that I've worn over the years, but I've used it in my executive, level as well. My question is, what's your thoughts on the video resume?
Yeah, I thank you for sharing yours, by the way, Lee, with me. Would you call it a video resume or a video cover letter, or just
video interview?
Video.
Yeah, I don't really know what to call it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there was a number of years ago where we thought that was going to sort of take off.
Yeah,
that we're going to do these little video vignettes or whatever. And it's so funny how it hasn't really taken off.
Right.
I watched yours and it was really impressive. Obviously you worked with a professional to do this. You didn't just turn on your Zoom lens, right?
Right.
You really did this, and it was lovely. I mean, I don't know if you want to put the link in the chat for people to see, but It was really interesting. It was edited. I mean, he was very professional. So I think if somebody wants to take the time to listen to it, it's impressive in that it's the road hardly ever traveled, to tell you the truth. Yeah, really. I mean, how many, tons and tons of candidates have I ever screened that anybody's ever done that? But that takes time, and that takes effort and thoughtfulness, and most people wouldn't even think of it. Don't know how to do it, know the videographer to you. I mean, it's a thing. So there was one company, and I don't know if they're still around. I cannot remember for the life of me maybe it was videointerviews.com, something like that, where they apparently at the time did that for people. Don't know if they still do it, but we recruiters are not looking for it. If you do have one, I think it's nice to, when you're just like you did with me, right? You just sort of sent it to me from a networking perspective. If somebody wants to take the time, I would suggest that they're fairly short. I think yours was it 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
I think it was closer to 3.
Yeah. I mean, it was very nice, but that means somebody has to take the time, in video land, right?
Yeah.
I think having something that's maybe like a minute, if you're going to do it, probably is a little better, just because, our attention span and social media and all that.
2 minutes and less is the window, the golden sort of time frame.
Yeah.
And we were right over that. The guy that did it, this is what he does for a living. And we recorded an hour's worth of content. It was just you could tell it was not scripted. It was just random questions and kind of wandering down, side roads. And he found it hard to, he cuts off time for a living. And he said he knowing what we were wanting to cover, that's why we went a little bit long.
Yeah.
You know, I found it interesting because I've sent it to a number of recruiters, and to your point, none of them have really seen it or watched it. And they asked, well, I didn't notice that. And I always put my resume and that together.
That's right.
So, you know, that's fine. I think a good use of it, though, is to put it on LinkedIn or Facebook. So if you were trying to maybe use that internal champion sort of concept, they might be willing to watch it, whereas the recruiter or hiring manager
Exactly.
might not say,
Because
look what I saw, look at this person.
Right. Someone who's trying to get to know you from a
Yeah.
networking perspective, maybe may.
Right.
And the may has to do with how relevant you are to their world.
Right.
Okay. So if it's somebody that like, so for me, you're relevant to my world because I work with people like you. So I was like,
Right.
oh, let me take the time. If you were in, I don't know, the consumer packaged goods sector,
Right.
it wouldn't make sense for me to take the time, right? It just, because I couldn't help. We're not in the same world. So, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is recruiters, if a recruiter actually has a search, this is kind of how it works. They go directly to the resume, or on LinkedIn, they'll go directly to the experience section, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
They'll start checking some boxes. Does this person have the core requirements, whether that's the industry, the title, certain keywords, check. We literally do that in 2.5 seconds. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating when I say that. 2.5 seconds, we go, whoosh, we can see it. It like jumps off the page to us. If we like what we see, then there can be another level.
Right.
Oh, go a little deeper. Oh, now let's go into the nuance of the role. Now, if somebody like you has a video cover letter kind of a thing, which again, it is the rarest thing. It's a rare piece of meat, it's like really rare. We might go to that step if maybe we're trying to get to know you a little better. Maybe it's before the interview. Oh, this is kind of cool. He has this here. We might take the time if we have the interest.
Right.
First you have to check the major boxes.
Yeah.
Then this would be an add-on. It's the same difference as in the beginning of an interview when someone says, tell me about yourself. You're already in the interview before they ask you that question. They're not asking that question in the resume. The resume is just, have you? The interview is, do we like you?
Right.
Who are you?
Yeah.
The resume is, what have you done? The interview is, who are you? And the who are you is that video that you're talking about. You're just prepping them before they ask you the question, tell me about yourself. You're giving it to them. Question is, are they ready for that answer?
Right.
They want to hear that answer. And they'll only want to hear that answer if you are right for their search.
Sure. And I agree with all that. I didn't think it was something to pre-pen that. I just thought it would be something interesting to try. And
it is interesting. It is good for you for doing it.
Well, something different. I try to cover a lot of bases with it. I think if I was in a more narrow field, for instance, the coaching that we were talking about earlier, if you did some smaller ones and you do that just with your phone and here's today's tip of the day, you're building some content that people can look at and maybe start to refer back to you because, I perceive you as to be someone who's knowledgeable in this area. And can you help me?
Yeah, videos are a wonderful thing these days. They really are. Picture speaks 1,000 words, right? So you can do that in a creative way. Even if you're just a regular job seeker, you don't do a full interview. To your point, you want to do a little thought leadership, do a little post on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. So you're right. People see you as an expert.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Good tip. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
So I have a question. I've always been taught that your average interview answer should be about, 2 minutes, 1:45 seconds. Is that the standard? I'm being told by a different set of people that it should be 45 seconds. Is there a standard? I mean,
a real interview, it's funny, I've never, for so long as I've done this work, I've never actually talked about the timing or even thought about the timing. But as you were saying those two numbers, 45 seconds seems a little short to me. because I don't think you can cover enough detail in the story in 45 seconds. You can get a high level overview, but if it's a story, situation, action, result, to do that in 45 seconds would be pretty tight. So I don't know if it's exactly a minute 45.
I
But-
just was asking, Sherry, you've been around for a long time, what your thought was.
I don't know specifically. What I can say is if you practice with people, there's sort of a, I don't know, like a comfortable time. It's kind of like, when you're standing in front of somebody, there's a certain amount of social distance that we all, I don't know what that is. I think somebody's actually measured it once. I don't remember what it is, but there's a distance where it's like not too far away. Well, social distancing notwithstanding. Okay. So pre-pandemic, an amount that feels comfortable, amount that feels too close, amount that feels too far away. What that exactly, it's a feel, right? Same thing with your story. If you practice with people, get the other person to feed it back to you. Did that feel too short? Did it with the feel of it, right? And maybe that, I don't know the timing of it. I really couldn't tell you, other than Goldilocks, bowl of porridge, right? Just right. A good intro, good middle, good conclusion, wrap it up, or it feels good.
I mean, if we're gonna have a conversation, 45 seconds is fine because you're tossing information back and forth. But if I'm giving a standalone answer, I just think 45 seconds is way too short.
That sounds about right to me. Yeah, I'd agree.
I know Kimberly practices with me sometimes on the interview group.
Oh, good. What interview group are you in?
Kevin Confey.
Okay. Is that through CNM?
It's a standalone group that runs parallel to CNM. He does have a small CNN group, but he's been doing it for 5 years. He started in the Oakton Library of all places, and now it's a Zoom call online.
Cool. Good to know it exists. In fact, if you have a link, if you want to put a link in the chat box, either one of you, so folks can have access to it.
You have to go to the CNM interview group and he will invite you in. That's how you get in.
Oh, okay.
You have to attend his interview group, which is like an hour-long session, and then he invites you to this 2.5-hour session.
Okay, and his interview group meets when? The one with CNM?
Is it Tuesdays?
It's Tuesday evening.
Tuesday
I think
night.
Is it
5:30?
5:30.
Okay,
yeah,
so it's before the main
5:30.
session.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so for those who don't know what we're talking about, CNM stands for Career Network Ministry. And I'm going to pull up the main CNM meetup site, okay, just the regular one. And you'll find on this page the different CNM meetings. So CNM meets various times during the week. Their main meeting is Tuesday night. The program starts at like 8 o'clock, but before then they have, I think it's several programs, right? They've got
quite a
this one,
few.
LinkedIn, resume review, different things.
Right.
Excuse me. So yeah, you can go avail yourself of that. Thanks, ladies, for that.
What's good about it is he makes you practice on your feet a question that you may not think about. And then all of a sudden, you've got 20 people staring at you and you're trying to give a reasonable answer.
Right.
And people are pretty honest with you about how good or how bad you can be, which is very helpful before you get to the interview, that you've had a lot of practice at doing it.
Almost like
Ties in
Toastmasters.
there as well, huh?
It's like Toastmasters for interviewing.
Absolutely.
That's cute. That's cute. All right, Lee, then Kimberly, then Sil.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down.
I had a question. So I have a friend and he's telling me that he doesn't have enough work to do. And he has to make up assignments for himself. Do you have any advice for that?
This is somebody that's working in an organization?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Somebody I know.
Well, I mean, I think his opportunity is to find projects that need to be done. I mean, be thinking about what are the needs of his department, the organization in general. What are the challenges that it's facing? Has he overheard people talk about certain kinds of challenges? Could he help another department? Could he help a colleague? Could he make himself available? Just be thinking about, let's listen. There's always a problem, right? Every organization has problems all the time. What is he hearing? How can he contribute? So maybe it's outside of his little domain, maybe other departments, other colleagues, people down, QB down the hall from him, right? He's just listening and asking people, what are challenges are you facing? How can I help you? I'd like to raise my hand for a project. What do you need help with? Which is good for everybody. It's good to keep him busy, obviously, but it's good for the coworker that he's helping. Not to mention, it shows that he's a team player. It shows that he's volunteering for other things. He could actually get tapped for more projects if he's really that good at what he's doing. Other hiring managers might notice, oh wow, he's really been volunteering and has done a great job. Maybe he can set himself up for a promotion because other hiring managers notice the good work that he's doing. So I'd recommend that he go and talk to colleagues and see if he can help out.
And the other path there, Sil, is for him to, if he has ideas about how to improve a process, can he go to his boss or go to a different department, and say, hey, I've noticed that this might be improved by doing X, Y, Z. What do you think? And, I'd be happy to help, improve this. If somebody agrees, yeah, that would be a great idea. So.
Yeah, because everybody's getting ready to go back into the office. So maybe he could do like a 1-pager on COVID protocols,
Sure.
that OMB has put out. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Find the need.
I find it surprising that anybody in any job today doesn't have enough to do.
Right. Right. I heard once, I think it was Seth Godin, who's a famous motivational speaker, was talking about innovation. And but how do you get leadership to notice your innovative ideas or whatever? You just do it, right? You don't so he was explaining, and I hope I'm going to share this story correctly. I think he was talking about McDonald's and how I don't know whether it was the Big Mac or the cheeseburger, something like that came to be. If I'm understanding the story correctly, some franchise, one of the McDonald's stores, one of the owner, whoever it was, the manager, just had this idea to just do this thing, whether it's to put the cheese on the hamburger, I don't know, to do this something. And it worked out so well that all the other franchises caught on. And because of his example, everyone else benefited, right? Instead of making a big deal about it and going, oh, I want to get this approved, just did it. And so if you see a need and you fill it and something starts working, sometimes it just gets socialized after that. And then all of a sudden it gets picked up and your idea gets noticed. So anyway, find a need, fill it, just do it. Yeah. Kimberly?
So I have a question for you all. Typically, I ask questions at the end of the interview. So one of the questions I ask is, how do I compare to the ideal candidate?
Mm-hmm.
Typically, I get responses like, I'm looking for someone who's collaborative with what I do. They work well with subject matter experts, so on and so forth. I had an interview where the response was, all right, let me repeat the question. How do I compare to the ideal candidate? And the response was, you're not an old white guy.
I don't quite know how to respond to that.
But then the person explained it, what they meant.
Okay.
Because they said it and chuckled. So unlike you, and you went, I just went, and we were on camera. I just went, oh. And then they explained it. And once they explained it, I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense.
I've had people, look, I'm a recruiter, all right? I've had employers say things like that to me in confidence. I'm not saying they should have said that. I'm saying they have said that because they think they can let their hair down with me, right? I'm just the recruiter.
Right.
I'm not the candidate. To actually say that out loud.
Exactly. And it had to do with the fact that it's a very diverse
I understand why they say
population.
No.
That's fine.
I get why they're doing it.
But it was just like,
look, that phrase has come up to people like me quite frequently these days, actually, right? That concept of we want to diversify the staff and we have too many of whatever the thing is that we have too many of, and we need more of other people. And the fact that they said it to you is
I was
This
just
is,
like,
this is an example of what I said before. Expect the unexpected.
wow.
In the interview.
Just
It
wow.
was-
Wow,
it
wow,
just-
wow.
hence why I put in the chat, I used to train people. I used to train
Right.
hiring managers on
Right.
interviewing.
Funny,
You know, so they
Kimberly,
wouldn't
it's actually,
say-
it's funny. It's one of my practice areas too. Once in a while I do that. If I
Yeah.
ever get another gig, I should call you. Maybe we can tag team and do it together.
Because, and part of the reason why I did it at that time was we had hiring managers that were hiring entry-level people, and we wanted to make sure they did not ask illegal things
Yeah,
like
sure.
marital status, or can you get, how can you, or do you have transportation? But there's a way that you ask certain things
They're
where
absolutely
it's not illegal. You know,
correct.
you have kids and stuff like that. It's like, you can't
Yeah,
ask
the answer, if you're looking for that kind of thing, is, can you what's the phrase? Can you devote your full time and attention to this job? Is there anything that would preclude you from giving your full time and attention?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then Karen, your question about the timing, I had an interview as far as how much time you spend on a response. This was the first time this has ever happened in my career. I've never heard of it. I had a timed question in my interview. So the interviewer actually said, you have 1 minute to answer this question. And when said the question, I had a minute, and I finished just in time because she said time. And I was like,
She actually
Wow.
timed you? That's amazing.
yes. And I was just like,
Wow. Wow.
wow. And it was a panel interview online. So it was already like, when
Right.
she said, okay, here's
Talk
a
about
question, you have
taking
1 minute.
standardization to the next level. My goodness.
Yeah.
I was just like,
Expect the unexpected.
Seriously.
I think I've had it all in this go round.
Seriously. All right, Sil, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, why do you think they're starting to do like tests now after interviews? For my current federal job, I had to do a test. What do you think that's all about?
What kind of test?
It was like questions about contracts and the protocols and procedures that you would use, and it was multiple choice.
Employer, I can't say that there's a trend now. I can say that over the years, I've seen employers here and there administer tests, whether it is a skill test like you're talking about, personality tests. It's really just one more level of vetting to make sure that you're a qualified, candidate. Some people, for administrative assistants, many years ago, they used to do something called the inbox test. They'd give the person, here are all the things that you'd be, here's a sample assignment you'd be giving. How would you prioritize this? What would you do first? I mean, it's like, salespeople will say, we'll get the question, hey, can you sell me this pen? So people will use different vetting techniques. I don't think that what they did is unusual. I also wouldn't say that it's a trend necessarily. It's just something they stuck in the process because they wanted to, vet on a deeper level.
I've heard that they've been going away from them because I've had all kinds of tests over the years for probably the past 20 years. And this time around, I haven't seen any personality tests, the football test, whatever, they call them, just to make sure that, they're hiring people that are qualified.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen much of that going on. And maybe that because I haven't been in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't really heard one way or the other about it, just that they do exist here and there.
I had some online tests, including writing tests. One was to solve problems and then write up your small report. One was you're only allowed to use 5 sentences. So I've come across it.
Yeah, but those aren't really standardized, so they can match you with everybody else.
All right. I think we'll go. Vern, anything else you want to share?
No, not that I can think of today.
Okay.
So,
All right.
all
Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. And for those who want to stay on to the prayer call with me afterwards, you're certainly welcome. Otherwise, we will look forward to seeing everyone else, Lord willing, next week.